Can I trust in you?
Welcome to the Behind the Lens panel. My name is Jordan Emanuel. I'm currently Playboy's Playmate of the Year. And thank you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I ended up in front of the lens. I started off about a year ago as a bunny in the New York club. And from there, I became Miss December, and I shot in LA in September. And then I became Playmate of the Year. And Adrienne, who you'll be speaking with in a few minutes, was who shot my Playmate of the Year shoot. And it was really special for me because as a woman of color and a co-founder of a nonprofit called Women with Voices, it was so powerful to not only have another black woman behind the camera, but to have a full staff of wonderful women like Erica and Anna behind me on set. And their creativity and their understanding and their support on set for me and every other Playmate who is so vulnerable in front of the camera is so important. And I'm sure they're going to talk about how that communication between model and photographer and creative director is so important, because it is. And as a model, we experience those things where people aren't that way behind the camera. And so it makes these legendary experiences for us, and it makes the pictures just come out so much better. And everybody can just be happy with the result. So, Anna?
So my name is Anna Wilson. I am the director of multimedia at Playboy, and this is Erica Lowy. She is the creative director at Playboy. First off, we're going to apologize because we are behind the scenes people. We are never in this position. So we have papers and we have notes, and we're not going to be like, yeah. So forgive us for not being the most camera-friendly people. It's not our jobs. So back to business. We are absolutely thrilled to introduce these three photographers on this panel today. They are shaping the new Playboy gaze for us, and they have inspired us immensely as the creative team at Playboy. So me and Erica, we do this thing we call Create with Intention, and each of these photographers have contributed something beyond just a photo shoot. They've been selected for their photo shoots because they really bring meaning and cause to everything they do. So first off, we have Ryan Pfluger. He was one of the first photographers. Don't come out yet, guys. We'll tell you to come out at the end. He was one of the first photographers we reached out to with the new direction of Playboy. One of the most important things for Erica and I was to start shooting men as sexy as the women in Playboy. And Ryan did not disappoint. His first shoot with us was Ezra Miller, which I think a lot of you in this room have seen. And it went, it would not be an understatement to say, fully viral. And it really reached a new audience that had not been looking at Playboy in a long time. And it was so important for us. And Ryan is an amazing person. He really redefines what it means to be sexy with his gorgeous and beautiful photography. Then we have Adrienne Raquel, who shot Jordan's PMOI. And the story behind that is she first shot the amazing Lizzo for us, and after that experience and after we got the photographs, we were like, we're not done with her. So we had the Playmate of the Year shoot coming up. We were thinking of who, and we were like, let's bring her in. So she was in 2 full features in the magazine, and her style is amazing. It's diverse, but it also has such a particular look to it. She makes all of her subjects feel and look like royalty. And Erica will introduce our last panelist.
Last but not least, sweet Kelia. I'm gunning for her first name, celebrity name, so Kelia, she's incredible. We've been admiring her work for years, following her on Instagram, oozing over her aesthetic with our friends and colleagues, and we had to work with her. So we reached out for our spring 2019 cover shoot and sent the email, and she sent back a 10-page pitch deck of concepts. And simply put, every concept was amazing, and we couldn't decide on which one to shoot, so we literally shot all 10 concepts. And we landed on this one behind us, as you can see. But if you visit yes, please. It's incredible. If you visit the intercourse downstairs, you can immerse yourself in the surreal photographs that almost made the cover. Kelia is one of the most talented, creative, and driven individuals I've ever had the chance to work with. And shooting the cover of Playboy as a young woman at age 25 is inspiring. Not to mention, she completely won my heart over when she showed up to set with a coffee in one hand and a 30 rack of beer in the other. Talk about my dream girl, like, my God, I love her. But all of these photographers, it's the creative pulse, it's the internet, it's common beliefs that brought us together, and Playboy is really the glue. We're so honored to work with them, but anyway, they are not just contributors, they're family to us. And enough about our feelings. We're so excited to hear what they have to say, and so stoked to have Crooked Media's Ira Madison III to help moderate the conversation and talk about what representation in media means and how it can change culture. So Ira, Kelia, Adrienne, and Ryan, please come out, join us. Thank you.
Oh, that's right.
I know, right? We're out. We're out.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hi. Why don't we start with just asking, I'll start with you, Kelia.
Yeah.
How did you break in photography?
I like to remember kind of finding photography as I was trying everything I could as far as hobbies go. Like tried horseback riding, taekwondo, Irish step dancing. I was bad at all of those things, and when I was bad at it, I was like, this is not for me. And started making images, and was really bad at making images, but something in that process told me not to stop trying with how bad I was when I started, and I just kept making pictures.
And Adrienne, how about you?
Wow, I'm so nervous. I started photography actually when I was in college. From the moment I was a child until I was a teenager, I've always been involved in the arts. I've been painting, drawing. So I went to college originally for art, and I took an introductory photography course. And from that point forward, I just fell in love with photos. So I started off with self-portraiture, and then just moved on to photographing my friends and then models, and it just became evident to me that, this is what I want to do. So
All right.
just pursued it.
Ryan.
I was going to school for art history, and I was tired of writing about other people. So took a photo class, and it lined up to my social awkwardness as a way to meet people, and went to grad school, and have been doing it ever since.
Cool. So before you three, started working with Playboy, what was sort of what did you think of Playboy before, and then how did that change after you got the call and started working with them?
Should we go in order again?
Yeah, we can go in order again.
I was just reminiscing on this story recently. My friend Greg was in San Francisco and texted me, and he was like, what year were you born and what month were you born? Came back with the December 1993 issue of Playboy with some other ones that he thought I might like. And I would flip through those, and I didn't really get the chance to read the articles because they were kind of scary, to be honest with you. But the artwork inside I was really inspired by, and just felt like a full circle premonition moment where I got the email and they're like, hey, it's like Playboy, could be Playboy, all right. So that was kind of,
Okay, that's awesome. Playboy for me, I honestly I had knowledge of it growing up, but didn't really discover fully on my own until I was in my early adult years. But I've always admired the art direction and the execution of all the shoots. So from an art perspective, Playboy was the shit. Yeah, but the articles, I agree, are very so I was always attracted to the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up looking at Playboy. You know, my dad used to bring them home all the time. I think as like a queer person, it was just visually and aesthetically, it always was interesting to me, and I always wanted to kind of see for myself like how that would be as like a queer photographer being a part of that brand, what that would mean. So I was very excited when they gave me a call. And
what sort of aesthetic do you think that you brought to Playboy? I mean, you shot Ezra, you also shot Roxane Gay. So, you know, what do you think your queer perspective added to Playboy that it was kind of missing before?
I think that we kind of forget that, you know, straight white men have a very distinct visual style in the way that they look at women and at men. And I think the idea of being able to see kind of the beauty beyond is the perspective that I bring. And that it's really great that there's, you know, men being photographed for Playboy. I think that's really exciting, and that there's this spectrum of like what people find attractive and sexy, and it's not just one thing.
Yeah, can you walk us through a bit how you approached your Ezra shoot?
I mean, I brought a stylist on board that I knew would be great for it, and it just so happened that like our idea was exactly what Ezra wanted to do as well. Okay. So it was just kind of a great meeting of the minds, and you know, he is a lot as a human being, but it was when you have someone that's willing to completely collaborate with you, that's kind of when the magic happens, and that's what, you know, that shoot really was. A full collaboration by everyone, by Erica and Anna and me and my stylist Ryan. I had a movement coach there, and it just was, it all kind of came together.
Well, you know, and just speaking of that white male gaze, I mean, you know, you wouldn't normally see someone like Ezra in the pages of Playboy, and even like a Roxane Gay, you know, wouldn't see her in the pages of Playboy. How was that shoot?
With Roxane?
Yeah.
I've shot Roxane a few times before.
Okay.
She's a difficult person to photograph. She does not like being photographed. But I think even for her, she was kind of like, Playboy wants me to do this, so like, why the fuck not? Yeah. Because she's not the kind of person you would expect to see in Playboy, especially as like a woman of color, as a lesbian, as an activist, as someone that's very kind of publicly, you know, against the, you know, straight white man. So I think that there's something to be said that that's like the place that we're at now.
And going from Roxane to Lizzo, you know, in the pages of Playboy, you know, how did you approach that shoot, Adrienne?
Yeah, so when I received the email from Erica and Anna from Playboy, I was just in shock that it was even from Playboy. I was like, wow. And then when I realized that I would be shooting Lizzo, I was even more blown away. Her personality is so amazing. She's beautiful. She's literally like larger than life, like literally. And it's just, it was great. So when we started planning everything, Erica and Anna kind of allowed me to put as much creative input as I wanted to into the shoot. So my whole thing with Lizzo was to just make her look regal. Kind of like a princess. So I scouted the location, which was like this beautiful pink and red house. Everything in the house was pink and red. And we just had her like, literally, she looked like vintage glamour. Just beautiful, strong, delicate.
What do you think your perspective, you know, as a Black woman has sort of brought to this new iteration of Playboy?
Oh, okay, interesting. I think that I feel like as a Black woman and as a photographer, it's like my due diligence to like represent us in the best way and to capture us in the best light possible. So I think that I think that's what made capturing Lizzo even more special, because I really took extra effort and time into making sure that her personality and that her sexuality, her boldness translated properly. Yeah.
And then for Jordan's shoot, I mean, you
Yeah.
also rarely shoot nude.
Yeah,
So,
that was my
you know,
first time.
what was that like? You know, like how did you approach that and wanting to capture her for the magazine?
Yeah, so that was my first time ever shooting nude. I was terrified, guys, I'm not gonna lie, because I didn't know what to expect. But the thing with Jordan is her energy is amazing. Like, she's very easygoing, very welcoming, very loving. So I think once she stepped in front of the camera, like, everything just flowed so naturally. And shooting her was literally like a breeze. Like, it was really good. Same aesthetic and same idea as Lizzo, but yeah, that was it.
Kelia, you know, how do you feel, you know, shooting women in general versus how you were shooting women for Playboy? Or did you just approach it the same way?
I mean, yeah, it felt the same. I don't think the platform really changes the way that I would interact with a subject because it's mostly about the connection I have with the person I'm photographing. Yeah, so for Playboy, kind of had this idea in mind, you know, the topic on speech and keeping that in mind and communicating with my models and my whole team that I brought on. Yeah, it doesn't really change because of the platform. I want to represent people how they want to be represented, regardless of where it's going to end up.
Yeah, you know, when you sort of see other portrait photographers, what do you think that we're sort of missing right now that you would like to see more of?
It's just representation. I think women photographers, just the whole, you know, there's a lot of people who have been, and that's kind of what I think this whole conversation was supposed to be about, is like bringing the voices that might have been pushed back for so long to the front of the stage and giving them a platform to show their work, to speak on things they feel passionately about. So yeah, just representation.
The three of you are all, you know, photographers who are also popular on Instagram as well. You know, do you think there is? I mean, do you think there's something different in?
They're more popular than I am.
People like you on Instagram, right? Do you think that there's, you know, something different in this generation of photographers who, you know, you're able to see their work more readily, and does it change, you know, how you sort of shoot or how you present your work to the world?
I like to think of my Instagram as my website because it just gets so much more traffic because everyone's on the app already. So you know how many ways that someone can discover your work. But it is hard once you get to a certain point, I think, with followers because you feel like you have to cater to what is getting likes. Like, I hate it, but it's I have to think about that and the way that my grid looks and all of that. It's things I wish I didn't have to worry about as an artist, but it is probably the most lucrative platform that I could have my work out on.
What about you, Adrienne?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Just as Kelia, I pretty much treat my Instagram as my website as well. I feel like that's how I think I land a lot of the jobs that I do have. As far as posting and photographing content, I definitely try to tailor. I find myself tailoring content towards my followers, but really, my Instagram is just an extension of who I am in the world that I've created for myself. So I think intentionally I post and put out the work that I love, and then, you know, just hope that people love it in return. But ultimately, it's just an extension of myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil at this point. You know, being in a profession that is now, you know, with social media, it's like, what's the difference between an artist and a professional photographer and an Instagram photographer? And sometimes there's like a weird line that happens where people don't really know, and they're like, then you do have to cater to your audience, being like, well, look, this is what I'm doing. You have to take me more seriously, which is a little frustrating because, like, for me, I treat my Instagram just like a diary. It's like it's an extension of just my life, and not. I try not to no longer try to put my personal life on there because of that reason, because of the professionalism and trying to keep it as just that.
And you just celebrated, you know, your Time magazine cover, which was, you know. Can you walk us through a bit what that was like, you know, shooting
It was a real kind of vindication moment for me. I had worked for Time for about 10 years. And again, like as a queer person, to be able to photograph a cover that was a first of its kind really was humbling for me to kind of be the person to have that voice. And I never, thought that I would see two, gay men running for a political office on the cover of Time, and then to be the one that shot it. So it was, when I got the call, I was very, very surprised, because I actually hadn't worked for Time in about 3 years. So it was kind of a out of left field moment for me.
Okay.
But I'm very excited that it exists right now.
I mean, you've shot them now, so that was pretty iconic. Are there any other people who are like your dream people that you would love to shoot? This question for all of you.
Oh, dream people.
I got this question before this panel, so I really sat and thought about it. I think I landed on Gucci Mane as my number one.
Gucci Mane?
Okay.
Really, I'm not joking. I've loved him since day one. Sorry,
That
did
would be awesome. No.
I was prepared for that one. Gucci Mane.
I think mine would have to be. I really love Kelia Anne. Like I really love her style, and also of course Rihanna. I mean,
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, those would be my two, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I have a whole bucket list, so I feel like I'm constantly trying to check them off. Yeah, I would definitely say probably Rihanna and Dolly Parton, probably two of my real. It's like the people that don't get photographed often, that are so exclusive about their identity and how they're presented. Those are the people that I'm like, I want to photograph you, and I want to do something different with you and unexpected.
Well, yeah, I mean, even speaking of those people who don't get photographed often, you mentioned a bit, that Roxanne doesn't like to be photographed.
Yeah.
How do you all sort of approach people who, are famous, so like they need, obviously, a photo shoot done of them for this magazine, but they're not people who are, sort of comfortable in front of a camera? How do you make people more comfortable?
I think the main thing with making people comfortable on set is just arriving on set with good energy, being reassuring, just, telling them that they look great, they're doing a great job, positive feedback. I like to play music on set, which I feel like is always a good thing. And yeah, I just always also ask the talent like what they feel comfortable with. Yeah, and I kind of leave it up to them, and then I feed off of whatever they give me.
Do you pick the music, or do you let them?
I'll ask, like, do you have any requests? But if not, I'll kind of just, throw a little something together.
What's your go-to?
My go-to? It depends on what the mood is. It depends on what the mood is. I always have Bad and Bougie. That's always mixed into the playlist. It's like a mix between like chill and a little trap music. I might have a little Frank Ocean. I might play some Migos. I might love Beyonce, of course. It just depends.
Did you play Lizzo for Lizzo?
I did not.
Okay.
She sang her songs the whole time. She was
she
like
did?
singing her songs.
Okay.
Her personality is amazing. Like, really. Yeah, she was kind of sing along to different songs as we were going. It was great. Yeah, it's awesome.
Kelia, what about you?
I like to have an opportunity to kind of like let my subject trust me, that like I'm not going to photograph them in a way that isn't going to represent them in the way they want to be represented. And sometimes that takes a long time for someone to really get it. So just like you said, being encouraging, and like I know how I feel when I'm being photographed, and like my body does a weird thing where it like locks. It's like I'm totally unaware of everything. I can double check like everything. So just directing someone in a way that's like, oh my gosh, if you tilt your chin a bit this way, perfect. Like that kind of like bit of reinforcement and encouragement makes them feel comfortable and that they can trust me, and that it's going to be like a symbiotic kind of creation rather than me just doing my own thing. It's got to be a mutual kind of energy exchange.
And I feel like always after that first shot is always like kind of like, and then after the first shot, moving into the second look, it's always like smooth sailing. People get comfortable.
Yeah. And I only shoot on film, so letting someone trust me without really showing them like a, blown up digital recreation of what I'm shooting takes a lot more of like me proving myself, like, you can trust me, this is what I do, this is my job. But I've like started to shoot on Polaroids to like show them like, this is what this is gonna look like. They see one Polaroid and they're like, oh, and then the whole rest of the day is a dream, so it's very helpful.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a vibe. It's like, not all photographers are the same, not all people are the same. I think that's the beauty of having, editors that understand your aesthetic, your work, that have been on set and know, like for me, like I'm a really silent photographer. I don't give a lot of direction. I treat it almost like a therapy session. So that's kind of where the comfortability comes from. I think allowing people a space to just be with themselves is a rarity these days. So especially in a photo shoot where it's like, there's always so much happening, to like have a moment where you're just, okay, like I literally just want to see you. That's all I want. And I think people appreciate that and appreciate kind of the care and thought and just letting someone be who they are, especially with, actors and musicians and politicians. There's such this is like the facade of what I have to present, and then the reality of them as just a person is a very different thing. And that's always what I'm kind of trying to get to. It's like, I just want to see you outside of all this noise.
And you're working constantly, so like, where do you find the inspiration?
I think it's the going nonstop that I don't have the time to like think about it is what keeps me inspired, because it's like that fuel of like, what's the next thing? And I'm just a workhorse in general. I'm happiest when I'm creating, and if I have too much downtime, that's when I get kind of stuck up here.
Adrienne, what about you?
I think I find a lot of inspiration. I find inspiration through a lot of different things. One would be music. I'm like a huge music fan. So I like to hear things and kind of visualize how, the song would look if I were to make a video or if a picture could be created around it. So I think music is definitely a big key. Also, my friends are also creative, so they're always putting out all this great work, so I'm always inspired by them. And I spend a good amount of time on social media, probably more than I should. So I'm always just constantly seeing visuals and things like that. So I think it's a combination of just all of those things, and then just things that I make up in my head. So,
Yeah.
I guess when I have something like a cover to kind of conceptualize, I have like a pretty small library of photographers publications that I admire, and I like to kind of stick to those references that I know will always, like, regardless of if I'm referencing exactly what they've done, but just kind of like the way they make me feel about photography. That's usually when the most ideas flow out, is when they like make me excited by something they've done. Sometimes I avoid social media just because sometimes it can become redundant. Like, you reference a photographer you see on Instagram, and then you notice that everyone's referencing this, and you kind of lose your own vision and style because of trends or what's being projected at you. So I like to just stick to those photographers that I have at home that it's been done with.
Who are some of those photographers? Like, what art are you really just sort of into?
So William Eggleston, just his color work has always, like, since I started studying photography, really spoken to me, because he really likes to elevate the mundane. Or I don't know if he intentionally elevated it, but that's what he photographed. It was everyday items, kind of in these like simple setups, and by photographing the mundane and presenting it as art, I think that just that concept kind of is refreshing to me. Like, not everything needs to be this spectacular production or setup. It can be the most mundane thing, but still create a really beautiful image. So he's one of my favorites.
Ryan and Adrienne, what sort of photographers have you maybe historically loved? Who do you really love?
Yeah, my all-time favorite photographer is a French photographer. His name is Guy Bourdon. He was popular in the 70s, 80s. Just beautiful color work. Would create these super surreal portraits of women. He would shoot the Bloomingdale's catalogs, but they would be so sick. Like, he's just amazing. Are you familiar? He's so good. Yes. It's very dreamy, but also very provocative in a sense, very sexy, but also very sophisticated. And I think that's what I try to convey in my work as well. So it's my all-time favorite. Yeah.
All-time fave? I'd say Peter Hujar. He was a photographer that from New York that photographed basically just very similar setup always. He was kind of a studio photographer, but in his apartment. And he didn't become famous until about 20 years after he died, or 30 years. And it was because just like one person decided he was important to look at. And he was working at the same time as like Philip Lorca de Corsia and Nan Goldin and like that kind of generation of photographers, but he just never had kind of the fame that they did. And that's also kind of why I think his work is so special, because he just kept making it. It didn't really matter that, you know. And I think that's like the sign of a true artist, is someone that's making the work to make the work, not because people are looking at it.
What do you think fame as a photographer sort of means now in 2019? You know, it's I feel like if you ask people,
fucking exhausting.
You know, if you ask people about maybe photographers, they know, they'll know, like a David LaChapelle, they'll know like an Annie Leibovitz, but now there's so many photographers that people just follow on Instagram too, and they can just sort of reference them, or they may not specifically know who that person is, but they can see them in, magazines and things that are more readily available now. So, I mean, how do you think that looks now in 2018? Or do people even want that sort of large scale photographer fame? Is it possible?
I think because of Instagram, there's kind of an expectation to be an artist, but also like a human being with a funny personality and like dresses cool and goes to cool parties. Like, it feels like there's a social aspect that comes along with it now, which I'm sure, I mean, for LaChapelle that existed as well, but I don't think it was as accessible as Instagram makes it. So it's kind of heavy. And also having recognizable work, it feels like you're held to a standard of creating work that looks recognizable. So if you do something that feels like it makes your heart happy but doesn't really fit on your Instagram feed, it kind of throws everything off, and people might not like it, and then you might take that personally. It's a whole mess.
Yeah, and also, social media has changed, like just the fact that as photographers, we kind of have to relinquish a lot now from just like our image making process, where like it ends up taking a life of its own, where it's like, I'd say 95 to 97% of the people that saw the Ezra Miller photos have no idea who I am or that they were my photographs. And I think that that's kind of part of the world now, is like even, the Time magazine cover, it's like people aren't looking to see like that it was me that photographed it. They're just, oh, that was like an iconic cover. So like even just like a panel like this is a rarity to like have the face, like we stay behind the lens, so it's a hard world to navigate sometimes.
It is a hard world to navigate, I think. Like you were saying, Ryan, I think, I know for me, like, I definitely have the pressure, I think, of making sure that everything that I post is like kind of catered to my audience and that they're gonna like it. In the moment that I feel like I want to do something different, and I post and I share it, it's not that great, I'm like, damn, like I'm and that's the whole thing. And then I think that people also they want to see like, I don't really know. I don't like it. I like it, but I don't really know how I feel about it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. Sorry.
Why don't we take this time to open up and see if any of the people here have some questions for you all.
No one does.
It sounded like right?
I'm a Sagittarius.
That's right.
Hi.
Hi.
Great conversation. I guess just because it's so fresh on the topic about like Instagram and as photographers, I fall in this in between category and of I want to know the artist just as much as I enjoy the art. And whenever there is a beautiful photograph, I do look at to see who that photographer is, and I want to obsess over the artist. And that's sort of how I educate myself. And I feel like we're now moving into this next phase of social media. We're also, we're to the limit with social media, but now we're having a filter, and now it's more about the education, such as this panel, such as getting to know the artist. So I think just as much as you focus on the aesthetics as an artist for yourself, such as the grid or these things, what sort of boundary do you think you could push now that we want to be more educated, and the ones that follow you are going to follow you for the aesthetic, but also because we want to get to know more about your work, and not just through visuals, but also through an educational component? Like, what's something that maybe you can add, or I don't know, sort of change this thing that we're in with social media craziness?
I think just being transparent about being a human being as well as being an artist, and being like, dang, I had a really bad day today. Like, I don't feel like making something, but maybe this is something I created out of that. Just being transparent and not having a facade that separates you from the people who are interested in your work, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that, with Kelia. I think that, on social media, people post mostly the good things. We show all the good for the most part, and I think that opening up and being transparent about maybe days when you aren't feeling as creative, or opening up about how you find inspiration, or when you have a creative block, or finding new techniques to create or shoot something. I think that could be really helpful for sure.
Yeah, transparency is really important. I kind of like pride myself on that personally, of just that, like, just because I photograph celebrities doesn't mean that, like, I'm rich, or that, every day is a great day. Dealing with personalities that you don't know is exhausting. It's like most people go to work and they see the same people every day, and like every week it's like, all right, what is this week gonna bring me?
Yeah.
And I think also just in the social media conversation, it's like, I'm pretty public about like calling people out on things, and just the saying that images take a mind of their own. Like, half the people that I photograph, they have no problem posting my photographs, but won't even say that I'm the one that took
Yeah, I
them.
think that's so strange.
Especially when it's really prominent personalities that make hundreds of thousands of dollars just from Instagram posts, and where it's like, okay, like, the bare minimum is at least being like, well, this person helped me create content for me to put out to the people that enjoyed like following my life. And it's like, it's just the respect level of like, yeah, we are humans. Like, we put a lot of really hard work and passion behind what we do, and it's not just taking a picture on our phone and posting it and being like, today is great.
Hi, guys. Oops. Thank you for doing this and being here. Ryan, you're why I'm here. I love your pictures, and
Thank you.
I'm glad they're everywhere that I look. I just want to and I have an art history background as well, so that's inspiring to me. I just want to get down to brass tacks. What's your favorite portrait lens?
Oh man, I am not the person to ask that.
Your portraits are so awesome, and I feel like
I literally have used the same camera and the same 2 lenses for the last 15
What
years.
is it? What is it?
For my film stuff, I use a Mamiya RZ with an 80mm lens. And I started shooting digital like 3 years ago. And I use a Nikon. I hate talking about that stuff because it's like, it's not what you use. Like, it's so about like the way you see,
The energy
like, it's
and the
not,
collaboration.
because like I could give you my setup and you would never be able to take pictures like I do,
Right.
and vice versa. You know, like that's not a like, oh, like I'm a better photographer. It's just like even amongst the three of us, put us in the same situation with the same equipment, you're gonna get three really, really different photographs. And I think that's the important question of like, you need to have your vision, and then like the tools you use are kind of irrelevant at a certain point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. I have my vision down. I don't seem to have my tech down.
Listen, what is this?
I think it's a great book.
Do we have any other questions?
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I'm personally just interested in legacy. You know, all three of you guys are phenomenal photographers, and I'm really concerned or interested in seeing what you guys feel your work would, mean to people after you guys are gone. Not to get morbid, but I'm really interested in that. What are you really trying to create? What are you trying to leave? And what means the most to you? If anyone said, I worked 50 years, what did they get from it? What is that takeaway?
You have to answer. You did.
Wow. I didn't think about that one. 50 years.
I mean, a legacy is such a heavy question,
Yeah.
but I think, for me, it's like my whole kind of look on life is like, I just want people to meet halfway. I think that, having the three of us that are all, minorities and also from very different backgrounds, the idea that, we're only comfortable seeing what we know, or what looks like us. And I think for me personally, it's like, I just want us to meet halfway. So I want my work to feel like that no matter who it is that I'm looking at, that I'm seeing everyone as the same, we're all fucking human, and I want that to finally be what's at the table, and I feel like we're starting to get there, but again, this is a rarity. These are not the people that have been, behind the lens for publications for the majority of time that they've existed. So I think, this is a great step. Playboy has really done a really great thing by allowing diversity, or not diversity, representation, which I think is just really important. And I think that's what I want. I don't care about fame. I just care about people being seen.
Yeah, I think for me, I think my overall goal is to, of course, create work and that, puts women on a high pedestal and Black women on a high pedestal. But I think for myself, personally, as a Black female artist, I think legacy-wise, beyond the work and beyond covers and shooting for this and that, I think my main goal is to just kind of be a blueprint for someone else, another young Black woman, to know that she can do these things too, she can break these barriers too, she can shoot the cover of Playboy, she can shoot whatever, and she can make a career out of this. And there's not many Black females behind the lens, and not very many really truly in front. So I think that would be my legacy goal for sure.
I like to think of my images as timeless, something that can always be relevant and referenced. So not really I'm not a documentary photographer because I'm not photographing the here and now. I kind of create this abstract world that might be relevant, 50 years from now. So I like to think of it in that way and not too heavily following trends that are going to be forgotten in a couple of years, but just making something that's kind of everlasting.
What about you, Ira?
I want people to remember this conversation. Do we have anyone else with some burning questions?
Sure.
Hey guys, full disclosure, I'm a Playboy editor, so all those scary articles that they don't read. I'm really, really proud to have you guys here, especially with this audience. This is exactly what we wanted. And I want to note the lack of ego that you guys have, because what people might not know, and I'm going to talk from inside of Playboy, that the images that they created have really changed the course for what we're doing with the magazine and the brand. And they are sitting up there with so much composure and empathy. My question is, I don't want to make it seem self-serving, but I have firsthand experience of people's reaction to Playboy. It's what I live and breathe, whether it's overly positive or overly negative. With your images and what they've done for us and how they've even inspired our team and our followers and our fans and brought in new people to experience Playboy for the first time, were there any moments within your colleagues or within your personal relationships, wherever, when you said, "Oh, I'm doing this with Playboy," that it was perhaps maybe frustrating or there was some confusion because in this time when the idea of what feminism looks like or what representation looks like and what the patriarchy has done, Playboy gets weaved in out of those narratives depending on what someone's experience is. So I'm wondering if there was any confrontation, I guess, in terms of your personal beliefs, shooting for a brand that I believe everybody has a relationship with, and all those relationships are valid.
So I went to a private Christian high school when I was growing up. I just love the idea, like their alumni newsletter, like Kelia McCluskey shot the cover. Like, they're not gonna acknowledge that. They're gonna not invite me to any of the alumni events. Like, this is something that would be considered, wrong. And it was really hard to shake that feeling. Like, when I went to art school, someone would hang a nude self-portrait on the wall, and I would feel inherently dirty about that. So thank goodness I got the art school experience to kind of see a lot of nudes and understand that my body doesn't have to be sexualized. It doesn't need to be a dirty, inappropriate thing. So just working backwards, when I said I shot the cover of Playboy, a lot of people were like, "Who is it?" And it's well, they're kind of changing now. It's not about this sexy, it's a concept, it's a community, it's a conversation now, instead of being just a hot mama on the cover, So that's kind of my...
Yeah, I think, when I found out that I was shooting for Playboy, when I shared it with my friends and family, everybody was welcoming to it. They thought it was amazing. My dad was like, "Are you in it?" And I'm like, "No." He was like, "All right, good, because I don't know about that." And I was like, "Yeah, no." He was like, "So it's boobs and stuff?" And I was like, "No, Dad, it's tasteful." He was like, "Oh, okay," because it used to be. So anyway, but everyone was very supportive of it, I think. And like I said, the opportunity was very exciting for me. Literally 2 or 3 months before, I was doing a shoot here in LA at Malibu, and I happened to be shooting at the home of Suze Randall, who was one of the first, female erotica photographers, and she worked on staff at Playboy for years. So, to be able to sit down and have a conversation with her about Playboy and just about her work, and then to just kind of, less than 3 months later, be asked myself. I mean, it was just wow, this is fucking amazing. Yeah, and everybody was completely just open to it. I didn't harbor any negativity towards it. I was a little nervous about shooting Jordan nude because I was I don't know what to expect. It was my first time, but everything turned out above and beyond what I could ever expect. Even this is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just like anything to change people's views on what something's aesthetic is or what their brand is takes time. I think that it is exciting that Playboy is becoming a conversation, and I think that the idea that, as a queer man, I find women beautiful, and I want to be part of that conversation. I want to be able to photograph women in a way that maybe isn't sexual and is in a highlighted way of sensuality, or photographing men in a way that like is effeminate and that being sexy, and that there's this spectrum of people that are looking at Playboy. Women are looking at Playboy, gay men are looking at Playboy, straight men have always been looking at Playboy, and changing their idea of like what can be seen without being uncomfortable, that like somehow looking at a dude in a dress is like gonna gross you out. Like, no, like you can look at this and then like a few pages later look at something else, and that all of that's okay, and we can all look at that together. So I think that people still have an idea of what Playboy is, and I think that it's exciting that it's really that, you know, you guys have really been doing such amazing stuff to like really just push it in a way that makes people start looking at it differently.
And some of that's like already been there too.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like even as a gay person who wasn't like reading Playboy for like the hot models,
Yeah.
but was like, I feel like I have older like vintage issues at home because it has like a Shannon Doherty or someone on the cover, you know? So it's like, there's always been that sort of queer sort of aspect to Playboy, which I feel like is sort of pulled out now more in a 2019 aesthetic.
And not to insert myself in this panel, but I have something that we've been talking about internally. Does male nudity belong in Playboy? In an upcoming issue, we actually did a retrospective of all the times that there were male nudity in the book. There has been penis in the magazine. Does male nudity belong in Playboy? And Ryan, I mean, I started following you on Tumblr a decade ago, and so that's how I, was turned on to you. So that's why I feel comfortable asking this question about male nudity, because that's where it started. And nudity just actually all came up in your guys' responses to how do people feel about Playboy. It's like, I didn't ask a question about nudity. You guys all repeated that back. So does male nudity belong in Playboy?
Well, I think it's like one of like the few, if not now the only, like U.S. like national publication that has nudity. Like I think there's maybe a few, but like Playboy is obviously the recognizable one. That's going to be the first thing that comes up in conversation. Would I like it to be part of Playboy? Yes, because I do think that there are tons of women that look at Playboy, that read Playboy, that like, it's not even like, oh, like I would like to see that. I just think that it allows for it to be an even playing field, instead of, like, no matter how many people like us are behind the lens, things are still going to be sexualized and fetishized in a way outside of like what our intentions are. So I think like making it that there's different things that are seen makes it an even playing field of like, oh, okay, like maybe like we should just like respect bodies in general and just appreciate them for what they are. And that like men can do that too without like worried they're on the spectrum.
Something I've been thinking about a lot with the current climate of everything that's going on, how representation and diversity might be commodified at this point. So like people are including a woman of color because they think it's going to sell better, and then they can check that off of their things to do list. And so I think like maintaining a genuine, like this isn't about checking that box, it's about providing platforms for people, not because it's going to sell more magazines or it's going to make the big honcho happy, you know? And that's, I don't know, I think Playboy has a perfect balance of that right now, because it doesn't feel like you're advertising as a feminist magazine right now, but there are hints of feminism in there that aren't being sold with the wrong intentions.
I think with the current Playboy issue, I think that there's a balance, and there's a little bit in there for everyone, for the queer, for women, feminists, for men. I think you guys are doing a great job with keeping that balance and creating that. So yeah.
Well, I think we're good here. We've got one more question over here.
Kelia, you actually tapped into the question that I was going to ask about. For full disclosure, I don't have a television, so whenever I go home and watch my parents' TV, I just see this like onslaught of like wild representation. Like they have like you know, the black woman and, you know, with the shaving cream, like you never see it before. You have a gay couple, you have a disabled couple. Like it seems like it's just this like massive switch, which I love. But my question is how do you as amazing, beautiful photographers toe the line between representation and checking a box and, like you said, like come out of, I never know how to say that word, but yes, that word. How do you toe the line between checking a box and like really being inclusive? Like, and this, I guess the secondary question to that is, do you ever find yourself in a position where you're hired to do something and it's like, okay, you're gonna shoot the disabled person or, you know, not able-bodied person today. Like, how do you respond to that, and how do you toe that line?
I like to think about it in the sense, like, is this my story to tell? Like, do I have any personal connection to what I'm photographing? And if I feel like I do, I usually take the job. But if it's, like I said, I don't really do documentary photography because I do feel like I am still privileged by being a white female. So I like to take a step back from a lot of stories that I don't have a hand in. I can't tell that story. And leaving it open to a photographer who might be closely connected to that and having the opportunity to tell it in their way. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, same thing. Like, I don't do any shoots that I feel like don't personally resonate with me or that I can't identify with or that I wouldn't want to represent on my own. So, yeah, I stay very true to that, I think. And there hasn't been too many assignments or too many jobs that I've had where it just felt like it was a forced representation. So I don't know if I can fully speak on that personally as relates to my own work, but I do know that for a fact I don't take on any projects that I don't feel resonate with me personally. And most of the subjects, all the women that I shoot, like I said, I find them all beautiful. They're all just special to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I just think that like being your authentic self is kind of the only way that you can go about this business now. You know, as like perfect example, this is like the first year that like multiple companies have asked me to do their Pride campaign. And for years I've been like, hey, like for a photographer, like maybe you should like have me shoot a Pride campaign. And now it feels a little bit contrived in a way, like, okay, like now I have to check this box of like, look, we're like representing in all ways, like we're the people behind it, and it's like, okay, so like this year we're checking off that box and then next year we're gonna forget about it. So like I've been very conscious of like, is this a company and brand that like I feel comfortable with? Do I feel like they're using me to facilitate part of their representation for the year, or is it genuinely like, oh, like I just like your work and I would hire you for something outside of a Pride campaign? And I think maybe we're not there yet with that conversation of people understanding that it's like, also just because I'm a faggot doesn't mean like that's the only thing I'm interested in or the only thing that I have a voice behind. As with like a woman or, you know, a person of color, like I think that we're starting to get to that place of like, okay, like we understand what representation is, but now we also have to understand that like our vision, our aesthetic, and our voice goes beyond just like what we visually represent. And I think, you know, it's probably going to take a while to get there.
You got a question?
I guess this is kind of like in relation to other conversations that we've been having, but do you believe that there's a space for like transgender and gender non-conforming people in Playboy? And do you see that as something that is important to center in Playboy as it looks forward into diversity and issues of equity and gender inequality?
I mean, absolutely, yes, but I'm not the editor of Playboy.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'm down for all the inclusiveness and representation. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's real. I again, as long as it's not checking off a box, like I think that that's the main thing that with any sort of representation of like, I don't want any publication or any brand to just like put someone on a pedestal for a moment just to say, like, look, we're seeing this and we did this, and that there's not a continued follow through. Like, I don't want it to be like, okay, there's, a gender nonconforming, playmate, and then there never is one ever again. Like, I think that it needs to be a very conscious decision.
I just have one question. This question's for Adrienne. You mentioned you shot Jordan's Playmate of the Year spread.
Yes.
And it was really, really different from what they did for her December Playmate of the Month spread, which was very retro. I want to know, what was the inspiration behind your angle for the shoot, and why did you choose the colors? And you presented her in a very bold, very sassy way. I just wanted to hear more about that process for you.
Yeah, no problem. So a lot of my work is like super color oriented. So when we were scouting a location in New York, like I was like just stuck on like, we need to find color, color, color. So the place we found had like these beautiful lacquered walls, red lacquered walls, like a blue library. It was very like color blocked. So I kind of used that as like the starting, like the first stage of planning her shoot. And then also her first shoot that she did was beautiful, but it was very soft and like, natural lighting, and it was very Cali, and I really wanted to do something that was bold. So we went with this like 80s, early 90s like glam look, a lot of metallics, a lot of bold red lips, red nails. And my whole thing with her, I just really wanted to create these like colorful like fantasy like vignettes, and I think that was my main inspiration. We also had a lot of inspiration from Nagel, who was a illustrator who did a really cool series for Playboy. Was it in the 80s? Yeah, Patrick Nagel? Yeah. So we kind of drew a lot of inspiration from that as well. Yeah, the shoot came out great. She did amazing. Yeah.
Any last question? Oh, well, thank you all for coming out here today.
Okay.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Kelia, Adrienne, Ryan, and Playboy.
Woo!
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.